Welcome to Quiz Time. I'm your Quizmaster Sean, and I've got 100 fun questions for you about the 1960s. So, how well do you remember it? Or perhaps you studied it? Well, let's have fun seeing what we know, shall we? Let's begin. In which year did the Nigerian Civil War, also known as the Biafran War, begin? 1965, 1962, or 1967? The Nigerian Civil War began in 1967. What was the name of the military conflict that broke out on November 27, 1969, between Saudi Arabia and the People's Republic of South Yemen? The Al-Wadiya War, the Yemen-Saudi border conflict, or the Dhofar Rebellion? It was the Al-Wadiya War. What was the name of the first telecommunications satellite launched in 1962, which carried telephone, television, and high-speed data signals? Was it Sputnik, Apollo, or Telstar? And it was Telstar. Who began organizing California grape pickers in 1962 and formed the United Farm Workers Union? Dolores Huerta, Cesar Chavez, or Martin Luther King Jr.? It was Cesar Chavez. What were the massive 1960 protests in Japan against the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty known as? The Kyoto Uprising, the Anpo protests, or the Tokyo riots? They were known as the Anpo protests. What is the name of the government massacre of student and civilian protesters that took place on October 2, 1968 in Mexico City? The Tlatelolco Massacre, the Mexico City Uprising, or the Plaza de los Tres Culturas protest? It was the Tlatelolco Massacre. What is Israel's largest water project, completed in 1964, that transfers water from the Sea of Galilee? The National Water Carrier, the Negev Irrigation System, or the Galilee Water Project? It is the National Water Carrier. What iconic structure was completed in St. Louis in 1965? The St. Louis Gateway Arch, the Washington Monument, or the Golden Gate Bridge? In St. Louis. Of course, too easy. The St. Louis Gateway Arch. What legal rights were established by a 1966 Supreme Court ruling overturning a rapist's conviction for not being informed of his rights? The Miranda rights, the Right to Counsel Act, or the Fifth Amendment protections? And those were the Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. What tragic event occurred in the Vietnam village of My Lai in 1968, where U.S. troops massacred 347 civilians? The Battle of Hue, the Tet Offensive, or the My Lai Massacre? That was the My Lai Massacre. What was the world's first supersonic passenger jet, first flown in 1969 and retired in 2003? The Boeing 747, the Concorde, or the Lockheed SR-71? That was the Concorde. What significant event occurred on February 15, 1965 in Canada involving a new national symbol? The creation of the Canadian National Anthem, the Great Canadian Flag Debate, or the adoption of the Canadian flag? It was the adoption of the Canadian flag. In which year did British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan deliver his famous Wind of Change speech? 1960, 1965, or was it 1962? It was 1960. What significant action did President Sukarno take on August 15, 1960 that caused tension between the government and Islamic groups in Indonesia? He banned the Masyumi Party, he implemented martial law, or nationalized all industries? He banned the Masyumi Party. On October 9, 1967, which revolutionary figure was executed by the CIA and the Bolivian army? Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, or Che Guevara? It was Che Guevara. What do you mean the CIA did it? On June 5, 1968, which prominent political figure was assassinated in Los Angeles after giving a speech about his victory in California? Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., or John F. Kennedy? It was RFK Sr. In 1964, which earthquake became the most powerful ever recorded in the U.S. and North America, killing 143 people? The San Francisco earthquake, the 1906 Great Earthquake, or the Alaska Good Friday earthquake? It was the Alaska Good Friday earthquake. Which Category 5 hurricane struck the U.S. Gulf Coast in 1969 with 175-mile-per-hour winds? Hurricane Andrew, Hurricane Katrina, or Hurricane Camille? In '69, it was Hurricane Camille. How many died in the 1960 collision of a United DC-8 and a TWA Constellation over New York City? 134, 150, or 200? And 134 people perished. Which tragic event in 1967 temporarily halted the U.S. space program before the Apollo 8 crew made history by orbiting the moon in 1968? Was it the launch of Sputnik? Was it the Apollo 1 fire, or was it the Challenger disaster? It was the Apollo 1 fire. In 1963, Maria Geppert-Meyer was awarded the Nobel Prize for her discovery related to which aspect of atomic science? The structure of DNA, the theory of relativity, or the nuclear shell of the atomic nucleus? And she discovered the nuclear shell of the atomic nucleus. In 1964, which country introduced the world's first high-speed rail service, known as the Shinkansen? France, Japan, or was it China? And it was Japan. Who was the leader of the group responsible for the brutal murders of actress Sharon Tate and others in 1969? Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, or Charles Manson? And the leader of that group was Charles Manson. Who was the serial killer responsible for 5 known murders in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October 1969? The Manson family, the Zodiac Killer, or was it Ted Bundy? And that was the Zodiac Killer. Which musician left the U.S. Army in 1960 and recorded It's Now or Never and Are You Lonesome Tonight? Chuck Berry, Johnny Cash, or was it Elvis Presley? It was Elvis Presley. Which country music legend died in a plane crash in July 1964 while piloting his plane during a thunderstorm near Nashville International Airport? Hank Williams, Jim Reeves, or was it Johnny Cash? It was Jim Reeves. Which influential soul artist, known as the King of Soul, was shot and killed in 1964 by the manager of a motel in Los Angeles? Was it Otis Redding, Marvin Gaye, or was it Samuel Cooke? It was Samuel Cooke. In which year did Simon and Garfunkel release the single, The Sound of Silence? Was it 1965, 1967, or was it 1963? It was 1965. Which Nancy Sinatra song became very popular in February 1966? These Boots Are Made for Walkin', Bang Bang My Baby Shot Me Down, or Sugar Town? Nancy Sinatra became famous for These Boots Are Made for Walkin'. and they'll walk all over you. Which country won the 1964 European Nations Cup by defeating the Soviet Union 2-1 on June 21st? Spain, France, or Italy? They defeated Spain. Where were Nelson Mandela and 7 others sent after being sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964? Were they sent to Pollsmoor Prison, Robben Island, or were they sent to Alcatraz? They were sent to Robben Island. On August 13, 1964, the last judicial hanging in the United Kingdom took place at Walton Prison in Liverpool. Who were the 2 individuals executed? Derek Bentley and Christopher Craig, Gwyn Owen Evans and Peter Anthony Allen, or James Hanratty and Michael Stone? It was Gwyn Owen Evans and Peter Anthony Allen. In which year and country was the 1962 FIFA World Cup held? And which country won? 1962 Chile, Brazil, 1964 Spain and Argentina, or 1960 Italy and Brazil? It was 1962 Chile and Brazil. When did BOAC Flight 911 crash after encountering severe clear air turbulence near Mount Fuji? 1964, 1966, or was it 1965? The year was 1964. When was former NBA player Timothy Dwayne Hardaway Sr. born? September 1, 1964, September 1, 1966, or September 1, 1967? He was born September 1, 1966. What was the name of the dog that helped find the stolen FIFA World Cup trophy in 1966? Was it Pickles? Was it Buddy? Or was it Rex? Well, that pooch was Pickles. Which avant-garde album was released by Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band in 1969? Trout Mask Replica, Safe as Milk, or Lick My Decals Off, Baby? It was Trout Mask Replica. Which 1969 Creedence Clearwater Revival song became an anthem for the anti-war movement? Bad Moon Risin', Proud Mary, or Fortunate Son? It was Fortunate Son. Who played the iconic role of Inspector Jacques Clouseau in The Pink Panther in 1963? Peter Sellers, Robert Wagner, or was it David Niven? It was Peter Sellers. In The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, who was referred to as the Ugly? Was it Clint Eastwood? Was it Lee Van Cleef? Or was it Eli Wallach? Well, the Ugly was Eli Wallach. Which influential band released their self-titled debut album in 1969, which became a key precursor to punk rock? The Stooges? The Velvet Underground? Or was it The Clash? It was The Stooges. Who directed the 1965 film The Sound of Music, which was based on the memoir of the story of the Trapp family singers? Steven Spielberg, Robert Wise, or Billy Wilder? And that was Robert Wise. Which actor starred as Charlie Crocker in the 1969 film The Italian Job? Niels Bohr, Michael Caine, or was it Ernest Rutherford? That was Michael Caine. When was Nicolas Cage, born Nicholas Kim Coppola, born? January 7, 1964, December 12, 1962, or March 15, 1965? January 7, 1964. Who did Crown Princess Beatrix of the Netherlands marry on March 10, 1966, despite protests due to his nationality? Claus von Amsberg, Heinrich von Habsburg, or Karl von Wittelsbach? She married Claus von Amsberg. When did Charles Whitman kill 14 people from the University of Texas Tower after earlier killing his wife and mother? September 1, 1966, August 1, 1966, or August 2, 1966? It was August 1, 1966. On February 13, 1967, American researchers discovered which set of works by Leonardo da Vinci in the National Library of Spain: Vitruvian manuscripts, the Codex Leicester, or Madrid Codices? And it was the Madrid Codices. The 1968 Winter Olympics were held in February in which city? Oslo, Innsbruck, or Grenoble? The 68 Winter Olympics. They were held in February in Grenoble. On January 23, 1968, North Korea seized a U.S. Navy ship that had been conducting surveillance in international waters. What is the name of this ship? The USS Midway, the USS Pueblo, or the USS Enterprise? They seized the USS Pueblo. On January 15, 1968, the Belize earthquake struck Sicily. How many people were killed in the earthquake? 380, 250, or 380? 380 people perished. Which film, based on a London and Broadway musical, opened in the U.S. on December 11, 1968, and later won the Academy Award for Best Picture? Was it Oliver, The Sound of Music, or Mary Poppins? It was Oliver. On February 24, 1969, which Mars probe was launched from the United States? Mariner 4, Mariner 6, or was it the Mars Odyssey? It was Mariner 6. In which year did Golda Meir become the first female Prime Minister of Israel? 1968, 1969, or was it 1967? 1969. Where was the body of former U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower brought to Lyon State after his death in 1969? Was it the Capitol Rotunda, the White House, or Arlington National Cemetery? It was taken to the Capitol Rotunda. Which Beatles album, released in 1969, became one of the most iconic in music history? Abbey Road, Revolver, or was it Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band? It was Abbey Road. Which 1969 debut album by King Crimson is regarded as a milestone in progressive rock? Was it Red, In the Court of the Crimson King, or Lark's Tongues in Aspic? It was In the Court of the Crimson King. Which actor starred as Jason in the 1963 film Jason and the Argonauts? Todd Armstrong, Steve Reeves, or was it Kirk Douglas? And the star was Todd Armstrong. In which year was the film Cleopatra released? 1961, 1963, or was it 1965? Cleopatra was released in 1963. Who popularized the miniskirt, making it a major fashion trend in the late 1960s? Was it Mary Quant, Coco Chanel, or was it Audrey Hepburn? It was Mary Quant. Which 1960s novel by S.E. Hinton highlighted the struggles of the working class? To Kill a Mockingbird? Was it The Outsiders? Or was it Catcher in the Rye? It was The Outsiders. In what year did the bikini become popular after being featured in the film Beach Party? 1963, 1962, or was it 1964? It was 1963. What is the title of the 1966 Western film starring John Wayne and Robert Mitchum, directed by Howard Hanks? El Dorado, The Searchers, or True Grit? It was El Dorado. In which year and city did the first ever Super Bowl take place? Was it 1965 New York, 1968 Chicago, or was it 1967 Los Angeles? The first Super Bowl was in 1967 in Los Angeles. Go Packers. Who was the last king of Greece, reigning from 1964 until the abolition of the monarchy in 1973? King George II, King Constantine II, or was it King Philip? It was King Constantine II. In 1964, which airline flight crashed near San Ramon, California, due to a suicidal passenger shooting the pilot and co-pilot? Pacific Airlines Flight 773, United Air Flight 232, or Eastern Airlines Flight 401? It was Pacific Airlines Flight 773. Which stage musical was adapted into the 1964 film My Fair Lady? The Sound of Music, Pygmalion, or was it Oklahoma? The stage musical that was adapted was Pygmalion. Which James Bond film, released in 1964, was based on the 1959 novel by Ian Fleming? Was it Dr. No? Was it Thunderball? Or was it Goldfinger? It was Goldfinger. Which actor starred as lawyer Atticus Finch in the 1962 film To Kill a Mockingbird? Was it Gregory Peck, Marlon Brando, or was it James Stewart? It was Gregory Peck. Which rock group starred in the 1968 film Head? Was it the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, or was it the Monkees? Hey, it was the Monkees. They weren't just monkeying around. Who became the first African American to win an Academy Award for Best Actor in a Leading Role at the 36th Academy Awards in 1964? Sidney Poitier, Denzel Washington, or Morgan Freeman? And that actor was Sidney Poitier. Which football match in 1964 led to a riot in Lima, Peru, resulting in 319 deaths and 500 injuries due to a controversial referee's decision? Italy versus Spain, Brazil versus Chile, or Peru versus Argentina? It was Peru versus Argentina. On which date did Richard Speck murder 8 student nurses in Chicago, Illinois? Was it July 13, 1966, July 13, 1967, or July 14, 1966? It was July 13, 1966. Who was accused of leading the murder of 82,856 Jews during the German occupation of the Netherlands and sentenced to 15 years in prison? Rudolf Höss, Wilhelm Harster, or Heinrich Himmler? It was Wilhelm Harster. Who was the last person hanged in Australia on February 3, 1967, for murdering a guard during a prison escape in December 1965? Was it Edward Kelly, James Earl Ray, or Ronald Ryan? It was Ronald Ryan. Julia Fiona Roberts, the American actress, was born on what date? September 21, 1969, October 28, 1967, or November 15, 1965? Julia Roberts was born on October 28, 1967. Who was the leader of the left-wing movement, APO, in Germany that Joseph Bachmann attempted to assassinate in 1968? Was it Karl Marx, Otto Hahn, or Rudi Dutschke? He attempted to assassinate Rudi Dutschke. In which city did the 1968 Puerta 12 football stampede tragedy occur, leaving 74 dead and 150 injured? Rio de Janeiro, Santiago, or Buenos Aires? It was Buenos Aires. Who did Crown Prince Harald of Norway marry on October 29, 1968, after dating for 9 years? Sonja Haraldson, Grace Kelly, or was it Margaret Thatcher? Sonja Haraldson. In which year were the Bonin Islands returned to Japan after 23 years of occupation by the United States Navy? 1968, 1967, or was it 1969? The year was 1968. Who was the American Independent Party candidate in the 1968 United States presidential election? Was it Hubert Humphrey, Richard Nixon, or George Wallace? And it was George Wallace. What infamous event took place in Tokyo on December 10, 1968? The theft of the Tokyo Imperial Crown, the 300 million yen robbery, or the Tokyo subway bombing? It was the 300 million yen robbery. Which two dogs perished when a Soviet satellite burned up on re-entry in 1960? Laika and Belka, Zvedalcha and Senia, or Cholka and Mushka? It was Cholka and Mushka. Which Soviet leader interrupted British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan at the UN in 1960, prompting his famous response, "I should like that to be translated, if I may"? Joseph Stalin, Leonid Brezhnev, or Nikita Khrushchev? That was Nikita Khrushchev. On September 26, 1960, who were the two leading candidates that participated in the first live televised United States presidential debate? George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, or Dwight Eisenhower and Adlai Stevenson? It was John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Who was the first sub-Saharan African to win Olympic gold, winning the 1960 marathon barefoot? Haile Gebrselassie, Abebe Bikila, or Kipchoge Keino? It was Abebe Bikila. What was the primary purpose of the Minuteman I missile, first tested by the U.S. in 1960? Nuclear deterrence, space exploration, or anti-aircraft defense? It was nuclear deterrence. On which date did U.S. President John F. Kennedy establish the Peace Corps? March 1, 1961, February 15, 1961, or April 1, 1961? March 1, 1961. On which date did Max Conrad set a new world record by circumnavigating the Earth by light plane in 8 days, 18 hours and 49 minutes? March 10, 1961, April 18, 1961, or May 15, 1961? He did it on April 18, 1961. Who was the Nazi whose trial began in Jerusalem on April 11, 1961? Adolf Eichmann, Joseph Goebbels, or Heinrich Himmler? It was Adolf Eichmann. In April 17, 1961, which U.S.-backed invasion of Cuba failed by April 19? The Cuban Missile Crisis, Operation Mongoose, or was it the Bay of Pigs invasion? It was the Bay of Pigs invasion. Which theme park officially opened to the public on August 1, 1961? Six Flags Over Texas, Walt Disney World, or was it Disneyland? It was Six Flags Over Texas. Which musical film, based on the Broadway play, was released in the United States on October 18, 1961? Was it The Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, or was it West Side Story? It was West Side Story. In the 1960 U-2 incident, which CIA pilot was shot down by Soviet missiles while flying a Lockheed U-2 spy plane over Soviet territory? Was it Alan Shepard, Francis Gary Powers, or James Alexander? It was Francis Gary Powers. When did Cameroon become independent from France? January 1, 1963, January 1, 1961, or January 1, 1960? It happened on January 1, 1960. Which Apollo 12 astronauts became the third and fourth humans to walk on the moon? Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, or Pete Conrad and Ellen Bean? 3 and 4 was Pete Conrad and Ellen Bean. On November 15, 1969, which Soviet submarine collided with the American submarine USS Gato in the Barents Sea during the Cold War? Was it K-19, K-129, or K-22? It was K-19. In 1969, which event brought Colonel Muammar Gaddafi to power in Libya? Was it the 1969 Libyan coup d'etat, the Battle of Tripoli, or the Libyan Civil War? It was the 1969 Libyan coup d'etat. Who implanted the first temporary artificial heart on April 4, 1969? Was it Paul Winchell, Denton Cooley, or was it Christian Barnard? It was Denton Cooley. Who is the youngest son of a famous automaker who was kidnapped in Paris on April 12, 1960 and released for $300,000? Martin Cooper, Eric Renault, or was it Eric Peugeot? It was Eric Peugeot. And question 100. Which iconic preschool TV series premiered in 1969 on national educational television? Was it Blue's Clues? Was it Sesame Street? Or was it Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? That was the premiere of Sesame Street. And that's all I got for you. Thanks for playing Quiz Time. You did a great job. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And share your score in the comments, please. We want to know. Hey, thanks for playing. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.